Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. Although it's kind of a bit random to do that on the 20th of January, doesn't it? Hello, Suze.
Late, really.
Yes. We've
Hello.
been having too much fun to get started producing LinkedIn content for the year.
I know, right, we had a really busy start to the new year, which is fabulous because that's what we like. A lot of helping a lot of people plan and prepare for what the new normal or the new abnormal or the new, whatever that looks like
Or
is going to
just
happen
2025.
in 2025. 2025
Yes.
is, and there's lots of exciting things on the horizon, comes worrying things on the horizon. Well, worrying for some people. Um, but you don't need to be worried because,
Yeah.
we're here to talk you through what
So,
things might be happening.
yeah, so I suppose the starting point is in the same old bracket, of course, funding rates aren't going anywhere positive. Um, on a lot of funding lines, certainly for skills, you had some movement. It's kind of interesting which quals are drawing down more money, which quals are drawing down less money, which always shows you where government spending priorities are at that
Yep.
granular level.
Of course, the size of the pot hasn't changed. It's just
No.
what they invest in and
And
invest in better in terms of making sure certain skills gaps are being met.
yeah,
Um,
the ethos hasn't changed in terms of wanting more for less and pushing providers to become ever more efficient.
yeah.
Um, the amount of bureaucracy is sadly only going one way, which is upwards. Um, and, it's been clear for years that both in employability and skills, as organizations, you're there to manage government bureaucracy, and some employability and some training kind of happens on a good day once you've dealt with all that bureaucracy. Um, and that's only going to get worse, really, with more devolution of funding commissioning,
Yeah.
which we've talked about before.
Yeah, and we will continue to bang the drum on this because I think that you don't know what you haven't got until you really, really need it. And I think for a lot of providers out there, I mean, we know that UKSPF has been extended for another year. We know that the Adult Skills Fund is going more and more devolved. We know Connect to Work is going to be council clusters commissioning rather than national commissioning the way it has been done in the past through DWP. So we know that there is this much more localised agenda. It's no surprise. Labour was talking about this 2 or 3 years ago. I remember there's a conference. The minister, the shadow minister at that point talking about how they thought that local communities had a much better idea about what local needs were to be met for in terms of employability, in terms of skills, in terms of economic growth in local communities. But what people have yet to really, really think about in this exciting new world, what people need to start thinking about is actually what do my commissioning strategies look like for the year? What am I interested in going in for? And therefore, what maybe systems do I need to start thinking about, mapping
Because
out?
tech is important. If we're looking at efficiency of contract delivery, um, tech is vital. And we've been doing a number of projects with providers looking at supporting them to improve how they are using tech,
Yeah,
using it more astutely. Always like getting that one in, sorry. Um,
really.
yeah, really. Um, you've got a lot of, within skills, e-portfolio systems that are not tremendously fit for purpose from a lot of providers because if you look at it from an apprenticeship perspective, most of the portfolio systems are really still focused on the achievement of vocational qualifications.
Yeah,
Um, and in a landscape where increasingly providers are preparing for endpoint assessment and there are no qualifications, an e-portfolio system that measures learner progress purely by the completion and signing off of learning outcomes is not fit for purpose um, at all in terms of anything. Um, you have really clumsy ways of recording off the job training within apprenticeships. I mean, it's just a dreadful
Yeah, you
metrics for drawing down
and to
funding.
be honest with you, anyone who just heard you say off the job training has just broken up in hives because
Or
apart
fallen
from that,
asleep or turned off.
managing it, just managing the recording of off the job training is one of the it's just clunky wherever you go and
And
however
there's
you
no
look at it, it's really
quality
clunky. Yeah.
measurement within that. It's just purely you've got to hit a number of hours and
Well,
nobody really cares how you do it as long as you've
it's
recorded it.
it's audit, right? It's all.
It's
I mean, like
purely audit.
Ofsted does care, to be fair, about how you complete your off-the-job training, but in terms of how you record it and manage it in an efficient way, yeah, that is
And
clunky.
I could spend hours whining about which numpty came up with that rule as a funding requirement, but I will step away and show restraint.
No, I could start. I can do that. I
No,
had five
we're here to
people
talk about the
inside the
positive
agency.
things for 2025, and which
Yes.
numpty came up with that stupid rule is not positivity for the new year.
No, to be fair to the person who came up with the rule, I think they were thinking about it as a kind of like day release for 16 to 18-year-old apps that go to the local college to learn woodwork or whatever it happens to be, not thinking about the complexities of higher levels and professionals.
Just
But anyway,
you see so much mindlessness around that, but I shall move on.
yes, but because we're here to talk about the positive things in 2025.
So a
we know.
positive thing for 2025 is actually, while it might not feel like it, in that the rates aren't going up, the landscape is becoming more complex, not less complex, and you're in a environment where national insurance has just gone up. That's really hit a number of providers quite hard, particularly if you didn't have a big profit margin to start off with, you have a lot of staff in your model, then that's having a big impact. But that was so last year, which is why we're not going to dwell on it this year. So you're in this survival mindset, and we've been there, we've done that. And it's really tough to get yourself out of survival mode. So we're going to be talking about some things that can help get you out of survival mode. So actually looking at systems, processes, how you are using tech is a really key way to do that, because a lot of the inefficiencies that are building cost into your model can be solved by actually looking at how we can run our business differently.
Yeah, and I think what's really, really interesting about this, because we are entering into a new commissioning landscape, which is important to everybody. Of course, it is. If you're in the employability and skills industry, what commissioning happens next, where, when, and how, with who, is a really, really key thing for this year, right? Because we know our marketplace is in flux. It is in a time of change. We knew that change was coming, but we know that we're now going to have to deal with it. And a lot of times people go out and they go shopping for things without first having specced out exactly what they're going to need their systems for. And we see this all the time, and we see people have gone out and they've either commissioned somebody to build something for them, or they've gone out and purchased something off the shelf without actually really spending the time and using the expertise of people like us to spec out. I'm just saying, we are experts in this, spec out what actually the business needs from that system. And I think that's more complex this year than it ever has been before. Because if you look now at how the devolved commissioning is going to be linking much more closely with employability and skills together, not siloed.
And if you're an established employability provider, you are used to your MIS system being given to you.
Yeah.
And there's no ifs, no buts, no maybes, no room for interpretation. You are using that system.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to link it to anything else. And so you're in that tech mindset of, we get given this stuff and we've got different systems to run different parts of the business, and it's driving this siloed working. Lots of employability providers struggle with, I've got a contract over here and I've got a contract over here and I've got a contract over here, and we're not working together collaboratively to efficiently deliver all of the contracts. And partly that's because we've got a tech problem.
Yeah,
that doesn't make that easy.
some of
Um,
that behavior is driven by the primes systems because, and to be fair to the primes have to have control over their data, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's not like
they're
they're
not
doing
doing anything
a job.
wrong.
But it's that idea that if they've got full ownership and you're working with that prime, then whatever other systems that you've got to do whatever manage whatever other contracts you've got, in and of itself cannot speak to the prime system or reverse back out from the prime into something to do the overall MI management of the business in a consolidated way. But I think that going forward, there are people need to start considering what does that system look like for them? What data do they need to start capturing and capturing well, and in what format? We know that how councils and devolved authorities commission is very different from national commissioning. We know this. I mean, everybody who's got a devolved contract knows that the demonstration of certain things around social value. We know councils love a good bit of social value. How do you measure and manage your social value in your contracts? How's that built into your MI systems to provide accurate real-time data to commissioners and funders going forward as you manage contracts?
And if you're used to picking up somebody else's system and working around it, then the idea of building something that actually captures this wider information and the ecosystem that sits underneath it that drives all of that can be quite scary when you're used to not having any control over how you're going about doing things. Or if you've built up a culture that's entirely about compliance, and there are some providers where the questions that they're asking within progress reviews, the things that are being covered in sign up, are all based on compliance, what the funding guidance says, as opposed to what is good practice to have a good conversation with a learner that is also making sure that we're covering the funding guidance.
And yes, yeah, and to defend compliance teams,
nothing wrong with a bit of compliance.
we need to be compliant.
We do.
Nothing worse than paying back money that you've already earned and you've already spent.
And so, starting with the funding rules is a good plan to make sure that we know what it is that we have to do.
Yes.
So I'm not saying that, but when you have literally lifted word for word what it says in the funding guidance and plonked it into your progress review.
Oh, well, no, that's appalling. That's appalling.
That's not good practice. That's where I was going.
That's appalling. Don't do that. Don't do that. Be better than that. But what I think is
at least put it through ChatGPT first.
Right, exactly. But what I think is the more interesting thing at the moment for providers of employability and skills, putting to one side the prime systems, which people use at the moment, because that's obviously a very important part of contracting in terms of Restart, and that's just going to be what it is while Restart continues. But with the localized commissioning coming in for everything SAN apprenticeships, what do your management information systems capture that meet the needs of the new commissioners? So because the needs and wants and desires of ESFA managing a national ASF contract is going to be very, very different to the needs, wants and desires of clusters of councils or devolved authorities on ASFA contracting rounds going forward, or UK SPF contracting rounds going forward, or Connect to Work contracting rounds going forward. All of these different things.
Yeah, and even if you're just sticking within skills, those programs that you may be involved in work very differently. Your information needs and systems and processes, for example, as a community learning provider, are very different from a boot camp, are very different from an apprenticeship. And the question has to be whether or not the software that you're using to manage learner progress and the bureaucracy and the compliance, is it fit for purpose for all of those different programs?
And does it capture the data well for commissioners? Because you and I will always come at this. I mean, for me, it's all about compliance. It's about fact-based bidding.
And where the dead bodies are in terms of
Yeah,
compliance.
that
So, you know, where haven't we got a health and safety check? Where, you know, who's running late on their
oh no,
progress reviews? All
yeah,
of
no, no,
these
no.
kind of things from
Oh,
a day-to-day thing
yeah.
are really
Well,
important.
but this is the whole point about when you're looking at systems, it's about all of these differing needs. So it's about saying, as an old ops director, having those actually run that data, push that button to see where, and how to make sure the claim is accurate was incredibly important to me, because obviously I was in charge of making sure that that was 100%
Got to
accurate.
maximize the claim.
We've got to maximize the claim. But also for me, actually being able to run data that was able to reinforce the messaging of what was good in the business for things like Ofsted, for things like commissioners, when you were doing bidding, and you could very easily press data buttons and run dashboards and run great reports to demonstrate that actually 95% of our learners from BAME, you know, whatever, achieved whatever XYZ, because
Brilliant.
that was important, right? Because
Yeah,
that
and for
demonstrates
commissioners,
a
that's really
value,
important.
really
Yeah,
important. So it's
but
about
we
those three things
also,
together.
yeah, but we also have to have a business that performs, and we need to know which of our staff isn't performing on
Oh,
which
absolutely.
measures.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got to be able to break it down. And if you can't break it down, if you don't know, and for a lot of providers, they have systems where each member of staff can't just press a button. That's what amazes me.
But that's the, and that's
Coming from a background where we had systems where, as the MD, all the way down to a tutor, you could press the same button and get the same report instantaneously in real time to know where specific learners were, and you could then take intervention action.
but I know,
I
but I,
wasn't
yeah,
necessarily doing the intervention, but I was
you
certainly
were
bossing other people around.
you were bossing around other people. I know. Just saying.
It's
Hashtag just
why we
saying.
performed, darling.
I know. But also, what I think is in terms of that is that there's also people that are using systems at the moment that aren't properly utilized within their organizations.
Oh,
The
definitely.
systems and functions of the software that they're currently spending fortunes for on licenses are not being used well in the way that they are designed to be used to manage provision well.
And
So
if you wanted a way to significantly improve performance in your business in 2025, then go get yourself some training from your software provider. Would be a
absolutely,
really quick, easy win.
yeah, I mean, quite expensive with some of them, to be fair. They charge a flipping fortune, but
But then again, um,
but
if
at
you're
the same
wasting
time.
that much money by
Yeah, no, no,
underutilizing your
no,
very
no, no. At the same
expensive
time, I
tool,
absolutely agree with you. I'm just putting in that cautionary tone that don't be surprised when you get the invoice if you decide to go down that route, because so they do charge quite a lot of money. But honestly, the amount of places we go in and we see platforms that we wouldn't recommend necessarily to partners and to people that we work with, but have been utilized by that business or businesses to run certain aspects of their contract, and they are being underutilized. And you think, well, you're not, there is the element of, there is some kind of learner dashboard in there if you were putting in the information correctly, but it's not being used like that. Some
which
very
is a
expensive LMS systems are being used to run ILR out there, and
oh yeah,
it's yeah,
and it's that gap between MIS system and then whatever system you're using for managing the operations, and the two don't talk and the people don't talk,
yeah,
and that's where you get the biggest gaps in performance, with people making some dreadfully interesting decisions.
yes,
And that kind of brings me on to the biggest thing that providers can do to improve performance and profitability in 2025 is to really look at their performance management, their caseload reviews. How are you actually using your people and the conversations that you're having with your people to know what's going on? And are they data-led conversations, or are we making it up on the back of an envelope?
so we're going to finish with this because we've been talking for quite some time, as we always do. If anyone's got to the end of this, congratulations, well done.
Well done.
we are going to be running a series of chats over the next few weeks, looking at 2025 and looking at strategies for growth for 2025, and about how in what's quite an unstable marketplace, you can stabilize your business as much as you possibly can
There are
by
opportunities.
by looking at the opportunities out there. So we're going to be spending time not as long as this, because yes, this is quite
Nobody
long.
cares that much.
But you know what we're both like when we get onto our high horse about something that we care passionately about, we can't stop ourselves. It's like a nervous tick thing. We just have to talk and talk and talk. But
She says, keeping on talking.
yeah, we'll try. Yes, all I'm saying is we'll try and limit it in the future. But yes, join us over the next few weeks as we talk about all of the different ways you can help your business grow this year. Even though it's a year of uncertainty for everybody.
Great opportunity, though. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon.